right, today we've got another easy one. This is disconnecting means in Article 100. That is one or more devices or other equipment that disconnects the circuit conductors from their supply. All right, I think we all kind of know what a disconnecting means is, and it's one of those things where you have to have a definition because it's a code term and you have to define it. But the definition is almost not helpful. One or more devices or other equipment that disconnects circuit conductors from their supply. Certainly, this is a disconnecting means. I walk up to that cutout box, pull down the switch. That is a disconnecting means. I can then safely work on this equipment. Now, when I say safely, I'm not saying you've established an electrically safe work condition and you've locked it and tagged it and done everything else. I mean, there's no more power to it. I'm not saying that's the whole process. But that's a disconnecting means. I remember the first time that I learned about a disconnecting means when I'd been in the trade maybe 3 or 4 days, and they had me mounting a disconnecting means at some air conditioners. And the guy that I was working with explained a disconnecting means, and I think he actually said it really well. He said, the concept of a disconnect is once we have that air conditioner set, if an HVAC guy needs to work on that piece of equipment, maybe he's got his arms and he's elbow deep inside of that unit. We don't want somebody to walk over to the thermostat and say, gee, it's hot in here, and crank it on and end up, maiming the guy, right? So we need to have a local disconnecting means so he or she can shut it off and maintain control over it. Now, the definition is not great. Is a twist-on wire nut a disconnecting means? I don't think it's supposed to be. I think we understand what a disconnecting means is supposed to be. One of the things that confuses people with disconnecting means is they'll look at this piece of equipment right here and they'll say that is a service disconnect. Okay, it is absolutely not a service disconnect. A service disconnect is where you disconnect the service. This disconnect might be for servicing the unit. It's not a service disconnect. Okay, the service disconnect is the first place you can shut off the utility. So here's my disconnecting means. Again, this is just a definition, but if you want to read some of the requirements, you might find yourself in 440.14 for the air conditioner, or you go to 430.102 for motors and motor controllers. And one of the things that you'll see as a common thread is that the disconnecting means usually has to be within sight or in sight from the equipment, and that means it's within 50 feet and it's visible. Sometimes we have exceptions where we say if the disconnect is lockable, you might not have to have it within sight of the equipment. Sometimes that applies, sometimes it doesn't. It really doesn't apply to air conditioners. There's not an exception that allows me to put that in a remote location other than for supervised industrial locations, and it's pretty rare that you could utilize that. Not every disconnecting means has to be capable of being locked in the open position. Energy isolation equipment, according to NFPA 70E, energy isolation equipment, which is what this is, right? It isolates the energy from the equipment, is supposed to be capable of receiving a lock if it was installed after 1999. So usually, a disconnecting means is capable of being locked in the open position. That's not always the case, and that's kind of a different discussion. 110.25 talks about what that means, and then the various disconnecting means requirements might tell you whether or not that's required. Sometimes we have to have a disconnecting means that's actually capable of being locked on, like for unit equipment in 700.12, I think it's I now, where you actually have to have it locked on. Other times it has to be capable of being locked off. So that's your disconnecting means in Article 100. Be sure to like, follow, subscribe, and ring the bell.